The Apache warrior closed her eyes to die and woke up in a rancher's bed. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when the Apache woman moved silently through the forest. Every step she took was careful, almost as if the earth itself was speaking to her. She could feel the energy of the trees, the coolness of the morning air, and the soft whisper of the wind through the leaves. Her name was Aida, which meant first to dance in her language, a name her mother had given her because she had been born during the first celebration of the harvest. Aida carried her heritage with pride. Every movement, every thought, every choice she made was guided by the wisdom passed down from generations of Apache women. Her eyes were sharp, her senses attuned to the world around her. She could hear the distant call of birds and the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. Though the forest was beautiful, it was also full of challenges. She had learned to respect it, but also to protect herself within it. Aida had faced many difficult situations before, but today felt different. There was an unease that tugged at her heart, a feeling she could not ignore. As she walked along a narrow path, she reflected on her life. She had grown up learning the ways of her people, the skills of survival, the stories of their ancestors, and the values that kept them strong. She had trained in tracking, in understanding plants and herbs, in moving silently through nature, and in reading the signs of animals. She had learned that strength did not come from fighting alone, but from understanding, observing, and knowing when to act. She had been taught to be brave, not reckless, and to honor every life she encountered. Yet despite all of her training, Aida could not shake the feeling of danger. She had been traveling to a distant village to deliver an important message, one that her people hoped would help build a connection with others beyond their lands. It was not a journey she had taken lightly. She had prepared carefully, checked her supplies, and memorized the paths. But sometimes, even the best preparation could not account for the unexpected. Aida paused near a clearing to catch her breath and take in her surroundings. The sunlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns on the forest floor. She knelt and touched the earth, feeling the warmth beneath her fingers. This connection to the land gave her strength, but today it also reminded her of her vulnerability. She knew that accidents could happen anywhere. A misstep, a sudden storm, or an encounter with someone with bad intentions could change everything. She continued walking, keeping her senses alert. Every sound, every movement made her heart race slightly, a natural response for someone trained to survive. As she moved deeper into the forest, she noticed subtle changes. The birds had grown silent, the wind had shifted, and the shadows seemed longer. Aida's instincts told her to be careful. Something was different here, and she could not ignore it. Despite the tension, she reminded herself to stay calm. Panic would not help. Panic would not help. She had learned that in moments of uncertainty, the mind must remain clear. She slowed her pace, watching carefully for any signs of trouble. Her thoughts drifted to her family, her friends, and the people who were waiting for her message. She thought about the traditions of her people, the stories told around fires, and the wisdom of elders who had guided her life. These thoughts grounded her, giving her courage even when fear tried to creep in. Suddenly, she tripped over a root hidden beneath the fallen leaves. She stumbled but managed to catch herself before falling completely. Her heart was pounding, and for a moment, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Stay focused," she whispered to herself. "Keep moving forward." The forest was beautiful, but it could be unforgiving. Aida knew that she had to be careful with every step. As she continued, she noticed a small stream glimmering in the sunlight. The water looked fresh and clear, and she knelt to take a drink. The cool water refreshed her, calming her nerves and giving her a sense of clarity. She paused for a moment, listening to the gentle sound of the water flowing over stones. It reminded her of her childhood, of days spent learning to fish and gather plants near rivers, always under the watchful guidance of her family. Refreshed, she resumed her journey. She had to reach the village before nightfall, or her message might be delayed and her people could face difficulties. She moved quickly but carefully, keeping an eye out for any obstacles. She thought about the importance of her mission and felt a renewed determination. Her pride in her heritage gave her strength, and her respect for life guided her choices. As the day progressed, The forest grew denser. The light dimmed under the thick canopy, and Aita found herself relying more on her other senses. She could feel the vibrations of the earth under her feet, the scent of plants and soil, and the faint movements of animals nearby. Her mind stayed focused, but there was still an uneasy feeling that she could not shake. Something was waiting ahead, though she did not know what it might be. Hours passed, and the forest began to change. The path became rocky, the trees thicker, and the shadows longer. Aita's muscles ached, but she pushed forward. She reminded herself that she had overcome challenges before, and she could do it again. But as she navigated a narrow trail along a steep incline, she misjudged a step. Her foot slipped on the loose stones, and she lost her balance. She tried to catch herself, but the ground beneath her was uneven and unforgiving. Aita fell, hitting the rocks and scraping her skin. Pain shot through her body, and she struggled to move. She tried to stand, but her strength was failing. She realized with a heavy heart that she might not be able to continue. Her thoughts turned inward as she lay on the ground, breathing heavily and feeling the warmth of the sun fading. She thought of her family, of her people, of the stories she wanted to tell, and the wisdom she wanted to share. Closing her eyes, she whispered a prayer to the ancestors, asking for guidance, forgiveness, and peace. She thought she might not wake up again, that this could be the end of her journey. The pain was overwhelming and her spirit felt tired. But even in that moment of despair, there was a spark of resilience deep within her. She had survived many challenges before, and though she could not see a way forward, she did not give up completely. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, she felt a strange calm. The fear that had been gnawing at her began to fade. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, of warriors who had faced impossible odds and found strength in the most unexpected ways. Though her body was weak, her mind held on to hope. She allowed herself a moment of rest, thinking that if this were her end, she would face it with courage. The forest around her was silent now, almost as if it was holding its breath. The wind had softened, the birds were still, and the sunlight had dimmed to a gentle glow. Aita could feel the earth beneath her, steady and unwavering, as if offering comfort. She let herself close her eyes fully, surrendering to the moment, uncertain if she would open them again. Her thoughts drifted like leaves on the water, reflecting on her life, her people, and the beauty of the world she had been born into. But life has a way of surprising even the most prepared. Just when Aita had accepted the possibility of the end, a gentle touch, a whisper of movement, and a presence nearby began to pull her back. She could not see clearly, but she felt safety, warmth, and care surrounding her. Her senses, though dulled by pain, detected a steady, calming energy. For the first time that day, she felt hope returning. Her body, weakened but alive, began to respond. She sensed someone was helping her, lifting her from the cold ground, carrying her somewhere safe. Though her eyes remained closed, she felt a connection, a trust forming with the one who had found her. The fear that had gripped her heart began to ebb, replaced by curiosity and cautious relief. She realized that she was not alone, and perhaps, just perhaps, she might continue her journey after all. As the light of the forest dimmed and the warmth of the unknown presence surrounded her, Aita held on to a single thought. She was still alive. And as she drifted between consciousness and sleep, she felt a strange comfort in the knowledge that the world had not yet taken her from it. Somewhere ahead, there was safety, care, and perhaps a chance to heal, to rise again and to embrace life in ways she had never imagined. And with that fragile hope, Aita's eyes closed fully, not in surrender to the forest, but in quiet anticipation of the journey that lay ahead.
Aita slowly opened her eyes.
The first thing she noticed was the soft, warm light filling the room. It was nothing like the sun-dappled forest she had been walking through. The light was gentle, even comforting, and it made her eyelids feel heavy. For a moment she felt disoriented, her mind foggy and her body sore. The memory of falling, the pain, and the struggle to survive in the forest all came back, mingled with confusion. She tried to move, but a wave of weakness held her in place. Every muscle ached, and she realized that she could not get up on her own. A soft voice broke the silence.
"You're awake," it said calmly, almost gently. Ayita's eyes fluttered toward the source.
At the edge of the bed, a man stood quietly watching her. He was tall and strong, with a kind face that seemed to carry patience and care in every line. His clothes were simple, workmanlike, but his eyes held something that caught her attention: warmth, honesty, and respect. For a moment, Ayita felt a surge of caution. She did not know who he was or why she was here. She did not understand how she had gotten from the forest to this room, and a part of her instinctively wanted to flee. But she was too weak to even sit up. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a soft, croaky whisper. "Where am I?" "You're safe," the man replied. "You're at my ranch. You were hurt in the forest. I found you and brought you here." His voice was calm, steady, and there was no hint of threat in it. Ayita's heart raced. Safety was something she rarely allowed herself to feel, and yet, in this moment, it was undeniable. Her mind raced with questions, but her body reminded her of her vulnerability. The pain from her fall had not gone away, and she felt exhausted. The man noticed her discomfort and moved closer with gentle steps. "Don't try to sit up yet. Rest for a little while. You need time to heal," he said. His tone was patient, without being overbearing, and there was something in it that made Ayita feel a little less tense. She watched him carefully, trying to understand his intentions. Even though she had been trained to trust her instincts, she had never met anyone like him before. He did not seem threatening. He did not demand anything from her. Instead, he offered care and space. Ayita's body relaxed slightly, though her mind remained alert. The man moved to a nearby table and brought a glass of water. He handed it to her carefully, making sure she could reach it without straining. "Here," he said softly. "Drink slowly."
"It will help." Ayita took the glass with trembling hands and sipped.
The cool water was refreshing, soothing her dry throat and calming her racing thoughts. She swallowed carefully, grateful for the simple act of kindness, yet still wary. As she drank, she tried to remember how she had arrived here. She remembered the fall, the pain, the fear of not surviving, and then nothing. Her mind had gone blank after that. Now, lying in the soft bed, feeling the warmth of the room and the quiet presence of the man beside her, she realized that someone had saved her life. That thought alone brought a mix of relief, confusion, and curiosity. "Who are you?" she whispered finally, her voice gaining strength. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I work this ranch. I found you in the forest and brought you here. You were hurt badly. I thought you needed help." His words were simple but steady. Ayita studied him. Daniel's honesty seemed genuine. She could sense it in his eyes, in the careful way he moved, and in the calmness of his voice. For a long moment she remained quiet, trying to process everything. Part of her wanted to speak, to demand answers, to understand why this had happened. Another part of her just wanted to rest, to let someone else take care of her for a little while. She had spent so long relying on her own strength, surviving alone in the forest, and now she felt a strange mix of relief and unease at having someone help her. Daniel noticed her hesitation and gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't need to do anything right now," he said gently. "Rest. Let your body recover. I'll be right here if you need anything." Ayita felt a flicker of trust. It was small, fragile, and cautious, but it was there. She nodded slightly, acknowledging him, and let herself lie back against the soft pillow. As she rested, her mind drifted. She thought about her journey through the forest, the challenges she had faced, and the fear that had gripped her when she thought she might not survive. She remembered the forest sounds, the sunlight on the leaves, and the strength she had drawn from her heritage. And now, she thought, she had been given a second chance, an unexpected gift that she did not fully understand. Hours passed quietly. Daniel checked on her from time to time, offering water, adjusting her blanket, or simply sitting nearby without speaking, giving her space to rest. Ayita observed him, noticing his gentle care and attention to detail. He was not overbearing, nor did he try to force conversation. His presence alone was enough to make her feel safer, and yet she could not shake a small part of her instinctive caution. When she finally felt strong enough to sit up slightly, Daniel helped her carefully. "Take it slow," he said. "There's no rush." She appreciated his patience. It reminded her of the elders from her village, who taught her that strength was not just physical but also knowing when to move gently, when to wait, and when to act. Once she was sitting upright, she looked around the room. It was simple but welcoming. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the wooden walls and the neatly kept furniture. A small vase of flowers on the table added a touch of warmth, and the scent of fresh air from the open window filled the room. It was peaceful, almost like a place where nothing bad could reach her. She felt a sense of calm she had not experienced in a long time. Daniel noticed her gaze and smiled gently. "I try to keep it comfortable," he said simply. "This is your space while you recover." Aita nodded, feeling the weight of gratitude growing within her. She wanted to say more, to ask questions about him, about how he had found her, about the world outside the forest, but the words were stuck somewhere between curiosity and exhaustion. Instead, she closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the safety and warmth around her. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax fully, letting go of the tension in her muscles and the worry in her mind. She realized that this was a rare gift, to be cared for without conditions, without expectations, without fear. And though she was cautious, a small part of her heart began to feel lighter. As the evening approached, Daniel prepared a simple meal for her. He brought it to the room, placing it gently on a tray. "Eat when you're ready," he said. Aita looked at the food, feeling hunger for the first time since the forest. She took small bites, savoring each taste. The simple act of eating, of nourishing herself, made her feel more human, more alive. After the meal, Daniel sat nearby, quietly reading a book. He did not intrude, did not ask questions, simply allowed her space to digest and rest. Aita watched him from the corner of her eye. She noticed his quiet strength, the way he respected boundaries, and the kindness that radiated from him without being forced. Slowly, her heart began to trust that he meant no harm, that he had truly come to help her when she needed it most. Night fell, and the room grew darker. The soft glow of a lamp filled the space, casting warm shadows on the walls. Aita lay back against the pillow, feeling both exhaustion and relief. She had survived the forest, survived the fall, and now she was alive in a safe place. She realized that life could offer unexpected twists, moments of grace, and people who could change everything in an instant. Before sleep claimed her fully, Aita whispered a quiet thank you to the spirits of her ancestors. She thanked them for guiding her, for helping her survive, and for sending someone like Daniel to care for her. She did not yet know what the future held, but for now she felt a fragile hope, a small light in the darkness that told her she could continue her journey, not alone, but with someone she could begin to trust. As she drifted into sleep, she felt the gentle rhythm of Daniel's presence nearby, his calm breathing, the soft rustle of his movements, and the warmth of the room surrounded her like a protective shield. For the first time in a long while, Aita felt safe. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew that for tonight she was alive. She was cared for, and she had been given a second chance. And in that quiet moment, Aita realized something important. Sometimes, life saved you in ways you could never have imagined, and trust, even in small doses, could be the beginning of healing. The next morning, Aita woke to the soft sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cows, the gentle clucking of chickens, and the quiet rustle of leaves in the wind reminded her that she was far from the forest she had called home. For a moment, she felt disoriented. The bed beneath her, the wooden walls around her, and the warmth of the room all contrasted sharply with the open wilderness she was used to. The forest had been her constant companion, her teacher, and now she was in a world that felt foreign and strange. She sat up slowly, her muscles still tender from the fall. Daniel was already moving about the room, tending to chores quietly. He did not rush her, did not speak loudly or demand anything. He seemed to move as if the house itself were a living being that deserved respect. Aita observed him carefully, noting the ease and confidence in his movements. He worked naturally, as if the place had always been his home, and yet he had taken the time to care for her with gentleness that did not go unnoticed. "Good morning," he said softly, noticing her stirring. "How are you feeling today?" Aita hesitated. Part of her wanted to say that she felt strong, ready to leave, ready to continue her journey. But the truth was different. Her body still ached, and her spirit carried a quiet exhaustion. "Better," she admitted finally, her voice soft. "Still sore, but better." Daniel nodded. "That's good. Take your time. There's no rush here. You can rest as much as you need." His words, simple and patient, were soothing. Aita felt a strange gratitude. She had spent so long relying only on herself, trusting only her own strength, that having someone offer care without expectation felt almost unreal. After a few moments, Daniel suggested a light breakfast. He had prepared eggs, bread, and fruit. Aita sat at the small kitchen table, still cautious but hungry. The food was simple yet nourishing, and with each bite she felt her energy returning. Eating slowly, she observed Daniel as he moved around the kitchen. She noticed the care he put into even the smallest tasks, how he treated each item as if it mattered, and how he seemed to understand balance between work and rest, action and patience. Once breakfast was finished, Daniel suggested she try to move a little, to stretch her legs. "There's no rush, but walking around a bit will help your body recover," he said kindly. Aita nodded and rose cautiously. Daniel stayed nearby, not hovering, simply ready to support her if she needed. The sun was higher now, casting a golden glow over the ranch. The fields stretched out in neat rows, the animals moving slowly about their morning routines. The air was fresh and clean, carrying the scents of earth, grass, and animals. As she walked through the yard, Aita felt a mixture of wonder and confusion. The ranch was so different from the forest she knew. Here, everything had order. The animals were managed, the plants cultivated, and the spaces organized. In the forest, life had flowed freely, untamed and unpredictable. Here, there was control, structure, and care in every detail. She found herself both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. Daniel noticed her observations and smiled gently. "It can be a lot at first," he said. "You're not used to this way of life. But it's not so different once you get to know it."
Aita considered his words.
She was not sure if she agreed, but she appreciated his effort to ease her discomfort. She realized that she was seeing the ranch through the eyes of someone who had lived here all his life. Someone who understood the rhythms of this place in ways she had yet to learn. Over the next few days, Aita began to adjust to life on the ranch. Each day brought small lessons and challenges. She learned to help with feeding the animals, tending the garden, and maintaining the property. Daniel guided her gently, showing her the proper ways to carry out each task without making her feel incompetent. There were moments of frustration. Her hands were not used to some of the tools. Some of the tasks felt unfamiliar. But she persisted. Each success, no matter how small, gave her a quiet sense of accomplishment. As she worked, she noticed subtle things about Daniel that deepened her understanding of him. He was patient, yet not passive. He allowed mistakes, but he also encouraged improvement. He spoke kindly, but with authority when necessary. He respected her space, yet he was always present when she needed guidance. Aita realized that his strength was not just physical, but also emotional, a quality that she had not encountered often. Their conversations began slowly, in quiet moments. They spoke of simple things at first: the weather, the animals, the work to be done. Daniel never pressed her for personal stories, and Aita appreciated that. She was not yet ready to share her past, her life as a warrior, or the journey that had brought her here. But she found comfort in his steady presence, in the way he listened without judgment, and in the way he seemed genuinely interested in her comfort and well-being. One afternoon, as the sun began to lower in the sky, Daniel suggested a walk to stretch their legs. Aita hesitated but agreed, curious about the land beyond the immediate ranch. They walked slowly along a small trail leading to a nearby hill, From the top they could see the entire property, the fields, the animals, and the distant horizon. Aita took a deep breath, the fresh air filling her lungs. The view was beautiful, expansive, and for the first time since leaving the forest, she felt a sense of calm she had not known in days. Daniel spoke softly, pointing out the features of the land. "These hills have been in my family for generations. Every part of this ranch has a story, just like your forest, I imagine." Aita listened, intrigued. She realized that in some ways, their worlds were not so different. Both required respect for the land, understanding of nature, and attention to detail. Both demanded patience, observation, and care. And in both, life could flourish if nurtured properly. As the days passed, their bond grew subtly but steadily. Daniel's quiet support, his patience, and his respect for her independence allowed Aita to feel safe without feeling controlled. She began to share small pieces of herself, her preferences, her skills, her observations about the land. Daniel listened, encouraged, and shared his own experiences in return. There was no rush, no expectation, only a gradual building of trust and understanding. Yet, even as their connection deepened, Aita felt moments of tension. She was not used to relying on anyone, and she often wrestled with her desire for independence and her need for support. There were times when she wanted to push herself too hard, to prove she could do everything alone. Daniel noticed these moments and allowed her space, giving her gentle reminders that strength was not diminished by accepting help. One evening as they tended to the animals together, a sudden challenge arose. A young calf had wandered off, frightened by a noise. Aita instinctively reacted, her warrior instincts kicking in. She moved quickly, calming the calf, guiding it back safely, and handling the situation with skill and care. Daniel watched, impressed. "You have a gift for understanding animals," he said quietly. Aita felt a quiet pride but also realized that her instincts, honed in the forest, still served her well in this new environment. The incident reminded Aita that while the ranch was different from the forest, her skills, her courage, and her wisdom were not lost. She could adapt, learn, and thrive here, even if the world was unfamiliar. And with Daniel's support, she felt more confident in exploring this new life. As night fell, they sat together on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. The air was cool, the sounds of the ranch softened by the evening, and the quiet brought a sense of peace. Aita realized that she had begun to feel something she had not expected: comfort, trust, and even a sense of belonging. The journey had been difficult, but it was opening her heart to experiences she had never imagined. In that moment, Aita understood that life could offer second chances in the most unexpected ways. She had survived the forest, survived the fall, and now she was learning to survive, and even thrive, in a new world. She did not yet know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long while she felt hope. And that hope, fragile but real, was enough to carry her forward. As she prepared to sleep that night, Aita reflected on her journey. She had learned that trust was not weakness, that adaptation could be strength, and that even in a world very different from her own, there was room to grow, to heal, and to connect. The bond she shared with Daniel was subtle, quiet, and respectful, but it was real, and she realized that perhaps this was the beginning of something new, something that would shape her life in ways she could not yet imagine. And so, under the vast starlit sky, Aita rested, feeling the warmth of the ranch, the strength of her own spirit, and the promise of a life that, though different from her forest home, held possibilities she was just beginning to see. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, filling the room with a gentle warmth. Aita awoke slowly, stretching her sore muscles and feeling the familiar ache of her body adjusting to life outside the forest. She had grown stronger over the past weeks, learning to navigate the ranch, caring for the animals, and walking alongside Daniel. Every day had brought lessons, small victories, and moments that reminded her how much she could trust life again. Yet even as she moved forward, a part of her still held the memory of the forest, of the life she had once known, and of the journey that had brought her here. She rose carefully, mindful of the strength returning to her legs, and dressed in simple clothing Daniel had provided. The day promised work on the ranch, but also the subtle promise of reflection, a time to consider who she was becoming and how much her life had changed. Daniel was already outside, tending to the animals. His movements were calm and deliberate, and he seemed to move with an ease that only comes from years of living in harmony with the land. Aita watched him for a moment, feeling a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "Good morning," Daniel said, noticing her at the doorway. His smile was quiet but genuine, and it made her feel welcome without words. "Feeling ready for the day?" Aita nodded.
Yes.
"Ready to work, ready to learn." The words felt true. She had grown into her role on the ranch, and she had begun to understand that strength came not only from surviving but also from connecting, from trusting, and from embracing new experiences. The morning passed in a rhythm of work and learning. Aita fed the animals with careful hands, noting their behaviors and gradually understanding the small cues that indicated their needs. She helped mend a broken fence, learning how to work tools in ways she had never used before. Daniel guided her with patience, offering tips and encouragement, never rushing her, never criticizing, always allowing her to find her own pace. During a quiet break in the afternoon, they walked together along a path leading to a shaded grove of trees at the edge of the property. Aita marveled at the differences between the ranch and her forest home. Here, the world was shaped and maintained, yet it had its own kind of life, one that required attention, care, and understanding. She realized that just as the forest had its rhythm, so did this land, and she felt a quiet connection growing within her. "Do you miss the forest?" Daniel asked softly as they walked. His question was gentle, not intrusive, but it caught her by surprise. She had not expected anyone to ask. She paused, thinking carefully before answering. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It was my home. It taught me everything I know. But this place, it has its own life. I can feel it, and I can learn from it, too." Her words reflected a truth she had come to realize. She did not have to choose one world over the other. She could carry the lessons of the forest with her, even as she adapted to a new way of life. Daniel smiled quietly, sensing the depth of her reflection. "I think that's very wise," he said. "Life is about learning from every place you've been, every experience you've had, and using it to grow." Aita nodded, feeling a sense of reassurance. His words were simple, yet they carried a truth she recognized from her own life as a warrior. Growth comes from adaptation, understanding, and encouraging. As the days passed, Aita became more confident in her abilities on the ranch. She tended the garden, caring for plants with patience and attention. She fed and groomed the animals, understanding their needs and responding with skill and care. She even began to help Daniel with small repairs around the property, learning to use tools she had never imagined using before. Each day brought a sense of accomplishment and pride, a reminder that she could adapt and thrive in a world that had once seemed foreign. Yet even in these moments of progress, Aita faced challenges. There were times when she felt the pull of her old life, memories of the forest, the independence she had relied on, and the solitude she had once cherished. These moments of doubt were natural, she knew, and she allowed herself to feel them without judgment. She understood that embracing a new life did not mean forgetting the old one. It meant finding balance, carrying lessons forward, and trusting herself to make choices that honored both worlds. One afternoon, a small challenge arose that tested her courage and resourcefulness. A sudden storm had rolled in from the hills, sending strong winds across the ranch. The animals grew restless, and the fields needed immediate attention to prevent damage. Aita sprang into action, guiding the animals to safe areas, securing gates and tools, and moving quickly but carefully to avoid injury. Daniel worked beside her, and together they managed the situation with efficiency and calm. After the storm passed, Aita felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced the unexpected with confidence, using both her forest skills and the knowledge she had gained on the ranch. Daniel looked at her with admiration. "You handled that very well," he said quietly. "You have a gift for staying calm and thinking clearly when things get difficult."
Aita smiled softly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon,
She had arrived at the ranch as a wounded traveler, uncertain of her future, and had slowly learned to trust, to adapt, and to embrace a new life. The forest was still part of her, a foundation of strength and wisdom, but this new world offered possibilities she had not imagined. She realized that life had given her a second chance, a gift that required courage, patience, and openness. Daniel spoke softly, noticing her thoughtful expression. "You've changed a lot since you arrived here," he said. "I can see how much you've grown." Aita looked at him, appreciating his words, but also feeling the weight of her own reflections. "I have," she admitted, "and I have learned that growth doesn't mean forgetting who I am. It means learning to live in more than one way, to trust life, and to trust others." Daniel nodded, understanding the depth of her statement. "That's very true," he said. "And I think you've found a balance that many people never do." Aita felt a quiet warmth in her chest. His respect, patience, and understanding had made it possible for her to heal, adapt, and grow. She realized that trust was not weakness, but a choice, and that choice had brought her here, alive and stronger than before. Over the following days, Aita and Daniel continued to work together, sharing quiet moments, learning from each other, and building a connection rooted in respect and understanding. They laughed quietly over small mistakes, celebrated successes, and supported each other in moments of challenge. The bond between them grew subtly but steadily, a gentle friendship that carried trust, care, and the possibility of something more. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the fields, Aita paused to watch a young foal learning to walk. The scene reminded her of herself, learning, adapting, finding balance, and growing stronger with each step. She turned to Daniel, who was nearby, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had given her more than safety. He had given her a chance to live fully, to learn, and to embrace life once again. As evening fell, Aita prepared for rest, feeling the contentment that came from accomplishment and reflection. She had faced challenges, adapted to a new world, and discovered a capacity for trust and resilience she had not fully realized. The journey from the forest to the ranch had been difficult, but it had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more open to the possibilities of life. Before sleep claimed her fully, Aita whispered a quiet prayer of thanks to the spirits of her ancestors, to the forest that had taught her, and to the new life that had welcomed her. She gave thanks for the lessons learned, the courage found, and the connections formed. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but she also knew that she could face them with strength, grace, and hope. That night, as she drifted into a peaceful sleep, Aita felt a profound sense of belonging. She had arrived at the ranch as a wounded traveler, uncertain of the future, and now she rested as someone who had found not only safety but also a sense of home. She had embraced the lessons of the forest, adapted to the rhythms of the ranch, and discovered the power of trust, care, and resilience. In the quiet of the night, with the stars shining overhead, Aita understood something essential. Life's challenges could bring fear, pain, and uncertainty, but they could also bring growth, connection, and hope. She had survived, she had learned, and she had embraced a new path with courage and grace. And in that understanding, she felt ready for whatever lay ahead, confident in her strength, her wisdom, and the new life she was building. As the dawn approached, the first light of a new day touched the horizon. Aita lay in the soft bed, a small smile on her lips and a calmness in her heart. She was alive, she was learning, and she was ready to embrace the journey that life had offered her, a journey of growth, trust, and the quiet, enduring power of hope. And so, the Apache warrior who had once closed her eyes to die now faced the world with open eyes, strength in her heart, and the promise of a life filled with resilience, connection, and possibility.